This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, and Mr. Betcher's back in the cockpit this week. He's my
what?
Yeah, my Chewbacca's back. Yeah.
Now, am I facing backwards in the cockpit? You know?
No. And the Millennium Falcon, Chewie was like right there in the front.
Oh yeah, right next to.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Do I want to be Han Solo? Spoiler alert. Do I want to be the girl who's now the new pilot? Anyway, so yeah, it's important that you're back, and you've actually been back for a couple of weeks, but because of the way we recorded a bunch of stuff, you didn't come back last week. We had Jared on, and that was a great podcast talking about.
I'm confused, but we're talking about time. I feel like I just watched Terminator, the new Terminator movie. And
production values. We always like to build up a buffer when people go on vacation. And one of those things that we do is, we like to do some stuff in advance. And we had Cheryl on talking about, SCADA and ICS stuff. And then we had Jared on last week talking about, the questions you should have asked when you were getting your pen test company come in to do things, which apparently has been very popular because a lot of people don't ask the right questions when they're getting ready to do a pen test.
Good stuff to know.
Well, I think it's the little things that we often overlook, the procedural stuff, hey, who should really be involved in this conversation? Because I know you and we've been involved in a few pen tests together at a company we used to work at, and a lot of people were caught by surprise when the pen tester just shut up and we were going to start letting him bang on systems. So, it's important.
Yeah. They weren't there. They didn't have enough time to start shutting down, all the servers that were on that may have
not been patched fully, or
I don't think anybody's ever done that before. Oh no, my battery's about to run out. Hang on, 1 second. You can just keep talking.
Okay. So Mr. Betcher didn't plug his laptop in apparently. So, we can do this a little bit before. We still have our drawing for our DerbyCon ticket. We have
I got it.
We have an upcoming discussion about the CTF we did. That is going to be very good, I think. And if you want to get involved with the drawing for a ticket to DerbyCon, good Lord, man. You're killing me.
We're back.
What happened there? Is the table okay?
Yes.
You bumped your head. Are you okay? You got concussion? Do we need to?
Yeah, I had to crawl under the desk and plug in my laptop. So.
Okay. All right. So
we were about to go. We were about to deep six this podcast if I didn't get it in soon enough.
Oh,
so
goodness. Yeah. So I was telling people about the drawing for the DerbyCon ticket and that we were going to do a write-up on the CTF we did very soon. And, the way we do the drawing is you go support us on Patreon at the $20 level, or you send us your receipt after you've donated to Hackers for Charity, and every $50 you give to Hackers for Charity, you get one entry into the contest. So if you give $150 to Hackers for Charity and you send us the receipt saying you gave us gave them $150, you'll get 3 entries into the contest. So we still have a ticket available for that. So, all right, Mr. Betcher, we're going to talk about Mimikatz this week, aren't we?
Yes, Mimikatz.
Yes. Without further ado, Mimikatz is awesome. It came on awful suddenly, didn't it? I mean, Mimikatz has been around for a couple of years, but it was amazing how it just kind of came on the scene all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a couple of years; it's more than that.
Really?
I think.
Well, maybe I just didn't know about it until I started really delving into, how Mimikatz works and everything. Well, I mean, according to their GitHub site, Alpha 2.0 has been available since April 6th, 2014. So yeah, it's a couple years old. Okay. Very nice. Maybe you could give some people a little background on what Mimikatz does and how it can ruin your day if you're a blue teamer.
Okay. Well, it's one of those tools that's always in the back pocket of, the red teams, the hackers. They upload it in their package, and they can exploit it by executing it on a Windows system, and it reads the memory contained in the process LSAS, right, which is your takes care of your logon processes. And unfortunately, for those who do have Windows prior to 8.1, those passwords can be in clear text in memory.
Okay, and Mimikatz is a Windows only kind of exploit system, right? This doesn't work necessarily with Linux.
No.
Okay.
No, it's Windows only. I looked at the code today because it's on GitHub, and it seems to be really well written. Has a lot of different functionality. It passed the hash type exploits as well, and it's one of those things where a hacker can grab passwords really quickly. This is one of the first things they'll probably try to get passwords, because it's a lot easier if you can get passwords in clear text that are live on the system than like dumping a password hash and then trying to crack it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can run Mimikatz as soon as you gain even any kind of access to a system, or do you have to have root to get it?
I don't know if you need admin access to run Mimikatz.
It seems like that would.
When I tested it, I used admin access, but I don't know if you need admin.
Yeah, it would seem to me if you've already got admin access on a box, you'd be able to go in and change passwords if you needed to, or do whatever. I mean, unless you were using it as a method to, I don't know. It would be noisy, I would think, if you were an admin and changing passwords, because people would start to notice fairly quickly. So, we'll find out if you need to have root access to that. But so there's during our research, we found several blog posts from a guy named GoJohnny.com and JimShaver.net. That's actually the first one I found, talking about defending against Mimikatz. There wasn't appearing to be a lot of information on how to defend against this, because if you're a blue teamer, you don't want that kind of insecurity on your network where people can just yank your passwords out of the RAM and running. That doesn't make any sense. So you want to protect against that kind of stuff.
Well, you want to make it a little bit harder too. You don't want to make it that easy.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. So you were telling me that there's some events, because you are the king of all things logging on the podcast here, that there are certain Windows codes that you can use to detect when this kind of stuff is going on?
Well, I tested Mimikatz on my lab box, and good news. If someone just downloads the default version of Mimikatz, antivirus should catch that. But the signature can be changed easy enough, and you don't know where it's coming from. However, when I ran it on my system and I did get my password out of memory when I used it, it was way too easy. I noticed that it created a 4673 event, and which is credentials were used or whatnot. So I looked in there, and the difference was, you could search for the SETCB privilege, and the process was there as well. So if you look for that string in your logs, and you filter out things like that run that normally, like Explorer, Microsoft Office, and the like, you'll be able to detect Mimikatz.
Okay, and
so it's not that difficult to detect.
Okay, yeah, and the SETCB privilege is according to Microsoft TechNet's article, it says it allows a process to authenticate like a user and gain access to the same resources as a user. Only low-level authentication services should require this privilege. So that's part of, you have to have a user that allows for that kind of privilege, I would imagine. So since you ran it as root or admin in this case would have those permissions. So I'm guessing once you gain root access to a box, you're going to run Mimikatz, or, you're going to run as... Actually, I guess you could run as any process like, IWAM user or something like that runs a system. System would also have that ability as well, because anything with a full access to the system should have the ability to authenticate like a user. So any account that has those kinds of privileges should be able to pull that information out of memory, which is a bad thing. So... we're going to link to the Jim Shaver post talking about ways to defend against Mimikatz. But one of the things I thought was very interesting, Jim mentioned, was the use of the protected users group that he had talked about in his article, taking advantage of limiting the administrator usage, which is a good thing. I mean, even on Linux boxes, you want to use sudo as much as possible because you don't want people going, su directly to root and being able to run as root. You want to sudo and protect, give the user elevated permissions, but only give them elevated access to certain types of permissions, say the mount command, or being able to run things like fdisk, or being able to wipe out an entire file system, which is important to protect against that kind of damage that a normal user could do.
Yeah, but we're talking about Windows here, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you can do the same thing using protected users groups.
You can. I think the issue there is a lot of companies let everybody run as admin, right? Because it's hard. It's hard to have an IT department that is always having to install things for everybody, and it's just much easier to say, well, you can do anything you want, go forth and do it, just don't bother me, right? Yeah. Or come to me when you have a real issue, right? Yeah. If you're trying to install FTPzilla, you can, and that way I don't have to. I don't have to help you figure out all these weird permissions and stuff like that. So I think the majority of companies give their employees admin access because of the level of difficulty for the IT department.
Okay.
And supporting everyone.
So, okay, here's the question. So you want to make people happy, but you want to be as secure as possible. So it seems like what's the 80-20 rule in this case? It would be like users need the ability to install software, right? So that's pretty much the big reason why we give people local admin rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is there a way that we could just say, okay, you have the ability to install software, and maybe you can control where it gets installed. Maybe not into C program files, but C user programs or something like that. And that's all they get. Or if they have to have local admin rights, make it way more noisy, make it way more verbose so that they go, okay, this guy installed, happy, silly cursor time, fun job.exe, and, make it way more verbose so that anything it does is automatically being logged by the system. So that way you can automatically peg when infection happened, or when, silly happy.exe, renamed Mimikatz or whatever was starting to pop on your box. I think that there'd be a way to do that, because what I think happens is, since we're running as local admin, you've got an easy password to guess. So somebody gets in onto your box. They have local admin. then they can run Mimikatz and pull all the information out, including domain creds if so needed.
Yeah. Yep. So what you're describing is the security triad, right? Usability, or not the triad, but just the whole push-pull, tug-of-war between usability and security.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Usability, functionality, and security. Pick one or whatever. Pick two. We talk a lot of triangles and triads here. There's a CIA triad, which confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and then there's the other one. It's like ease of use, security, and usability or something.
So there's that balance that you have to achieve, or a perceived balance. Now, you don't have to do that. I mean, that is one way to defend against Mimikatz, is just get those protected users privileges or whatnot. There are some mitigations you can do as well.
Such as?
Well, there is a KB that you install, which is a knowledge base or an update to Windows. Mm-hmm. And most of you probably have it already if you're running Windows 7. If you're running Windows 10, you have it. And that is to not store clear text passwords in memory, to use the hash of the password.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mimikatz is still effective, but it's not going to be as easy by giving clear text passwords away.
I wonder what kind of hash that is.
Well, Mimikatz can pull the NTLM and the SHA-1.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess the NTLM is probably an MD5, and because if you're mentioning SHA-1 separately, then it's probably the upgraded version, but it's still considered deprecated by many. The other thing is, a lot of even the newer versions of Windows keep backward functionality for the LM hashes, or the landman hashes in this case, which is stuff left over from like Windows 3.1 for backward compatibility to older hosts. That stuff should be turned off by default, either by GPO or whatever. And getting rid of the NTLM hashes, at least the V1 hashes. I think the V2 hashes are still relatively okay.
So, yeah, when you install the KB2871997,
easy.
That doesn't do it in and of itself. You still have to alter the registry.
Yep. Right. I've got another blog post from the folks over at Praetorian Labs out of Austin, Texas. What? Josh Abraham at Jabra on Twitter actually did this post on June 14th, so it's relatively recent. He was talking about using Mimikatz to steal clear text credentials, and he mentions the KB article that you had mentioned, which is 287-1997. Once it's been installed on Windows 7 or your 2008 or 2012 boxes, Server 2012 R2. There's a specific registry entry that you have to go in to disable, even having the credentials stored in memory. So after you run the KB article, add the registry key, and then I guess you have to reboot for that to happen. So this is something you want to set up when you're initially setting up the boxes. Passwords won't be stored in memory in clear text, which is excellent.
That's the goal. That's one of the goals. Right?
Yeah, and it's called removing W digest, or W digest authentication. So, the only recommendation Josh says is that it may break some IIS servers if you're using W digest for authentication. So you want to test it before you put it out into production. But yeah, that's definitely something you want to get rid of if you don't want to have your passwords in clear text, which amazingly, I know people who are upgrading to Windows 2012 thinking it's going to be better, but they still leave themselves vulnerable to this kind of stuff. So,
yep. I haven't tested Mimikatz on Windows 10 to find out whether by default it does not store clear text credentials. Still need to test that, but the detection of it is still the same. So you have two things you can do. You can install the update, and you can detect for Mimikatz, like we described. So there's a little bit of prevention there. Hacker's going to have to take the hashes and crack them offline, and then you'll be able to detect when Mimikatz is executed on your system, and that requires the right logging.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. So for the other thing you should do, because Go Johnny's website also mentioned for securing your protected users groups, users in your protected user group, you should forbid NTLM. You must use only Kerberos or a third-party software security provider. Don't cache your Windows Digest, which is funny because he says the reversibly encrypted credentials, so they're not a one-way hash. And then finally, of course, you want to, shorten your lifetime of your Kerberos ticket granting ticket, which I believe are the golden tickets that everybody talks about from. The default is 10 hours, and then you want to drop it down to 4 hours. So there's some really good stuff in this blog post. He talked about also protecting the LSAS process, which you mentioned earlier is I had it up here. It had a specific name, like LSAS.
Mm-hmm. LSASS.
Yeah, LSASS. It's the Local Security Authority Subsystem Service, which is responsible for enforcing security policy on the system. So yeah, you want to make sure that that's protected. That seems like that's kind of a duh thing. I'm surprised that it isn't a protected process already. But yeah. So yeah. So that was the things that I got from Johnny's blog post here.
Yeah, it says when a process is protected, only code signed by Microsoft may read its memory.
That's right.
Even if the user has admin rights or system rights.
Yep. Yeah. He was preaching the defense in depth. I don't like using defense in depth because I think that's marketed too much. I'd like to call it increasing attacker debt that the attacker has to overcome. So you're increasing attacker debt by setting up LSAS as a protected process, getting rid of NTLM, getting rid of WDigest, clear text credentials. I mean, you're just adding more time. You're making it a harder target to overcome. So I mean, that's all I'm thinking about when I want to do something or get defense in depth. And I'm just increasing the amount of pain that the attacker has to go through to get where it's supposed to be going.
Yeah, it's that extra layer or layers that you put, right? Mm-hmm. So, this has happened before, and it happened to me recently where, you have this fancy whiz-bang appliance, right? That's supposed to take things off the wire,
mm-hmm.
Do some fancy analytics on it, and prevent those things, the bad stuff from coming through. Well, unfortunately, that will fail sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't rely on that tool. Either it's going to get overwhelmed or it's bad juju coming through, because the hackers know about this stuff too. They some of them can afford these appliances, and they'll test their wares
mm-hmm.
on these appliances as well. So then you have to rely on your secondary defenses, which in this case, I'm thinking of as an example that happened recently was employees.
Yeah.
When you do the awareness training properly, they'll be able to spot these types of things that you never could, because you're not sitting at their desk getting their emails, right?
True.
And they'll alert you to that fact, and then you can start doing research and figuring out what happened, why it happened, who potentially would get compromised, and alert them to that fact, and then query for artifacts that you can get from the things that they sent you, and there you go. Level 1 was bypassed, but level 2 wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? So it's important to have those the defensive depth, as you will, or increase that attacker debt.
Yep. So the yeah, now that I know exactly what to look for, I'm finding a lot more information on people talking about Mimikatz, and then how to mitigate a lot of it. There's no way to totally get rid of it. I mean, Mimikatz apparently will still give you information even after all of this, but you're severely restricted once that occurs. So I think there's defending against Mimikatz is just implementing good practices and explaining to your employees why this needs to happen, or making it because a lot of this stuff you can do without restricting local user admin privileges. I mean, that obviously is in another layer, but you can still put in all the other things that we mentioned without ruining the ability to install.
It's like a patch and a registry key that gets you a lot.
Yeah, that gets quite a bit. Yeah,
and that's low impact. I mean, no impact if the patch has been out there for a while. You probably have it already. You just need to check. And then adding a registry key is no impact at all.
Yep.
We talked about the registry before. So there you go.
Yeah, and if you added, they can pull the password out of memory, but if you had, if you want to even add a second authentication factor, like, an RSA token, or, like a two-factor auth device like Duo or Google Auth or something like that, that would also increase the ability to protect against these kinds of things, because they can pull the password, but without the second factor, you are they're going to be stymied in that case.
All right, and of course get the detection mechanisms in so that you can detect when somebody is attempting, even though they may not be able to. Maybe you have the two-factor or whatnot, but you still want to know if somebody's traipsing through your environment trying to garner credentials in that manner.
That's right, and that's just chalking it up to good logging practices and that kind of thing. And again, password difficulty. If they don't get access to local admin in the first place, then they don't have to. You don't have to worry about Mimikatz being used on the box. So, So again, we're back to good password administration or good authentication mechanisms, making sure that we're not giving up the endpoint in that case. So.
And there are alternatives to Mimikatz. I was looking at one in particular. It uses PowerShell, and it is very noisy. If you're logging PowerShell, oh man, it's like crazy noisy with all the commands that it uses. So it's one of those interactive things where you have a menu, you press 1, 2, 3. Those things can be the techniques that it uses are similar, but still different than Mimikatz, and those things can be taken, those techniques, because PowerShell is what, C#. I mean, you can rewrite those algorithms in C and do the same things. But if somebody were to use that PowerShell to try and get credentials off your system, that would be highly detectable. You could log for or search for the authentication bypass that you always see with the PowerShell hackery. Things like that should throw red flags, right?
So that's always good stuff to know. So, well, Mr. Betcher, we had such a long podcast last week, and it's important, I think, to balance things out. So I think we need to cut this one a little short this week. My wife and I don't have a daughter this week, so we're kind of on vacation from having kids. So any last thoughts before we go about Mimikatz and what to do if you're a blue teamer?
Well, just to have defense in depth, right? Yeah. You need to try and prevent this sort of thing from happening in the first place, or make it increase your attacker debt, and then make sure you're able to detect it when it does happen. If something goes wrong, maybe you got a rogue system that you don't know about, or you haven't updated or set properly, that you're still able to detect when Mimikatz is occurring or anything like that, credential stealing, processes.
I agree. Yeah. Also, hammer home that password difficulty, or set up some kind of two-factor auth so that even if they do get the password, they still need that second factor. I would also suggest switching over your AD to Kerberos, and so you can use AES encryption versus NTLM or whatever. Yeah,
SHA-1.
Exactly. Well, those are hashes. That's a hash. But yeah. So yeah, those are all important to increase your attacker debt. So, Mr. Betcher, how would people get a hold of you? Since you've been back for a little while, you're going to be at Arsenal next week, which is the other reason why we were trying to get a buffer set up. If they wanted to see you at Black Hat, or talk to you outside of Black Hat after Arsenal, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, just hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Betcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED.
Awesome. So Arsenal, is happening. You're going to be speaking on the 4th, right? Sometime in the late afternoon with friend of the show, Mr. Michael Goff at Hacker Hurricane.
Yep.
You guys are going to be doing your LogMD thing, right?
Yeah, we'll do a demo, show everybody how it works and why, we're going to answer the question that you should be asking for all, the vendors you see is, what's this do for me? Why do I need this?
Nice.
Why do I even care?
What problem does it solve? Maybe.
What problem does it solve?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll be answering those questions. Why do you care?
Cool. So yeah, we also have, I just tweeted out earlier that, we had Josh Sokol on talking about Simple Risk. He's going to be back at Arsenal for a 3rd straight year. Georgia Weidman, she's going to do her mobile pen testing platform. I don't want to, it's like Chevraya or something. I know I've just butchered that. I'm sorry, Georgia. And who's the other one we were...
Lee Brotherston.
Lee Brotherston's going to be doing fingerprint TLS on the 3rd, I think. He's doing his on the 3rd. So is Josh. And then you and Georgia and Michael are going to be speaking around the same time on the 4th. So that's pretty cool that you all are be in the same building together. So, okay, so it got off a little bit. My Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake. The official podcast Twitter is at Brakesec, BRAKESEC. We're literally, I think, everywhere on the internet. We got a YouTube channel. We're on SoundCloud. All the links can be found in our show notes. TuneIn FM, Player.fm, the TuneIn Radio app. We're on the Google and iTunes Play stores, respectively. Yeah, all the links to stuff that we talked about, including blog posts, are in our show notes. So if you want to hit us up on those, that'd be great. We also take, Patreon. So if you get value out of this, like a little tip jar for $1 a month or whatever, hit us up on Patreon. The link is in our show notes there. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn as well. So you can find us there. Mr. Betcher will not be here next week. We actually have hopefully an interview scheduled, so it'll act like he's here, but he's not really here. So that you'll figure that one out for next week. So Mr. Betcher, good luck at Arsenal. Kick some ass. Make a lot of new friends. Okay.
All right.
Will do. So that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.